So let's talk about the first day that Kronos ever spoke to Luke. How did the two actually start working together? How and when did they meet, and can we actually pin down exactly when Luke swore his loyalty to Kronos? Let's talk about it. First, it's important to understand that Kronos didn't open Luke's eyes to the abandonment and abuse that he suffered at the hands of the gods, and we have to understand where Luke already was in his life when Kronos first reached out. Even since Luke's earliest appearances, he is known to resent his father and the rest of the gods for the way that they treat their children. And right now, the earliest canonical work showing Luke and his point of view is in the Diary of Luke Castellan from the Demigod Diaries. His journal is riddled with remarks about the gods, ranging from vague references to them never being present when their children are in danger to overt insults, such as the line, "Our parents had failed us. The gods were harsh and cruel and aloof. Demigods only had each other." And from here, he developed a fierce sense of loyalty towards other demigods. He sticks by Talia's side unwaveringly, agrees to protect Annabeth mere minutes after meeting her, and even vows to Hal, who he had known for one day and had tried to get him killed, that he would do right by demigods like him. Even though Hal had lured them into a trap, Luke understood that he was a victim of the gods just as much as he was, and he wanted nothing more than to protect his own. When he finally got to camp, however, this only got worse, starting around 3 years after his arrival. When Luke was about 17, he was given a quest by Hermes to infiltrate the Garden of the Hesperides, battle the dragon Ladon, and retrieve the golden apples of immortality, and Luke agreed. He embarked on the quest, and although we don't know much in the way of specific details, we do know that he managed to claim one of Ladon's claws as a trophy, but the quest ultimately was unsuccessful. Ladon had overpowered Luke, scarred his face, and sent him home in shame. When he returned to camp, other campers treated him with a sense of pity, and quests were suspended until Percy arrived 2 years later. Not only did Luke feel like a failure, but he failed at a quest that the gods required without ever actually stepping in to help in any way. We don't know exactly when Kronos made contact, but we do know that he reached out by infiltrating Luke's dreams. Kronos spoke to him by using a voice that finally understood everything that Luke had been through, and at first he made him feel heard. He knew exactly how to prey on Luke's loyalty, his sense of abandonment, and his love for demigods that had been treated the same way he had, and the dreams continued. We don't know exactly how long Kronos spoke to Luke before he took action, but we do know that in Battle of the Labyrinth, Kronos confirms that Backbiter was a gift to Luke in exchange for his allegiance to the Titan Lord, and we know that he only got Backbiter at the very end of the summer, long after the quest for the Master Bolt had wrapped up. Percy trained with Luke before his quest, during his first few days at camp, and in the end of the Lightning Thief, he specifically states that the end of summer came too soon, just before he goes to the sword arena to speak with Luke. It's on the last day of camp that Luke shows off his new sword, meaning that when he stole the Master Bolt, he wasn't officially pledged to Kronos just yet. Stealing the bolt was not a master plan. It was an audition for Kronos to put Luke to the test. It was his first major act in defiance against the gods in favor of the Titans. If Luke had failed, then Kronos would not have started the war, but he also would not have been found out. One rogue demigod would have just been blasted to ashes and he could figure something else out, but Luke himself was eager to please. We know that the theft occurred on the Winter Solstice field trip when campers got to visit the gods for their semi-annual meeting. Luke remarks that the security is laughably laxed since the gods are far too egotistical to assume that demigods might turn against them. They thrive on worship and praise, and their hubris has blinded them to just how many people actually hate them. Fueled not just by anger, but the rush of finally doing something about it, Luke swiped everything that Kronos had requested. So Luke went on the field trip, stole the bolt and helm of darkness, but he didn't make it away cleanly. He escaped from Olympus, but Zeus and Hades each sent out their respective hunting parties to find their missing weapons, and one such searcher on Zeus's team included the war god Ares himself. Initially, Ares wasn't in on the plot to steal the Master Bolt. He was the first searcher to successfully find Luke and confront him about the crime, and it wasn't Luke who got himself out of the mess. Luke reveals that Kronos actually began speaking on Luke's behalf to talk Ares off the ledge, knowing exactly how to manipulate both of them into doing his bidding. Just like he was able to match Luke's desire to help his friends, he preyed on Ares' bloodlust and his desire to watch the gods tear themselves apart, but they each wanted a war for different reasons. Luke wanted the gods to fall so that something new could be built in their stead, a new generation ruled by demigods who had been abandoned and left by the wayside. Ares, however, wanted a pro wrestling match. He wanted the gods to war with one another for his entertainment. But, like we illustrated in our video about whether or not Ares was ever punished for being complicit in the crime, he knows that fights amongst the gods never last. Poseidon and Athena attempted to overthrow Zeus once before, and they were not punished in the long run, and the war between the children of the Big Three that ravaged the planet was already a distant memory despite only happening 70 years ago. Long story short, Ares knew that consequences were temporary. But for a more detailed explanation on that, be sure to go check out the full video. We think you'll enjoy it. Back to the matter at hand, however. Kronos was the one who saved Luke from being annihilated by Ares, and Luke paid the price. He was tortured by nightmares for weeks, suffering severe abuse at the hands of Kronos under the guise that he didn't have what it takes to make the necessary sacrifices needed to topple the Olympians. For 6 months, Luke and Ares didn't have a good way to actually get the bolt down to Kronos, since they would have to cross through Hades' domain to do it, and they tipped their hands in the process. Hades knows all who cross the underworld, so if Luke or Ares did it, then the gods would immediately be able to identify the culprit, but Kronos had another plan. Kronos, being the mastermind behind the operation, devised a 3-way con to pit the big three against one another. Now, after all these months, they finally had the piece that they need, that being the son of Poseidon. For Luke, however, he still had not pledged his fealty yet, and that would only happen well into August during the final days of the summer program at Camp Half-Blood. Luke only leaves once he is completely consumed by the allure of Kronos and the rise of the Titans, which is a fascinating recontextualization of the quest and the theft of the bolt. Luke wasn't Kronos' top lieutenant, like we see later in the series. He wasn't leading forces on behalf of the Titan Lord, and he wasn't even rallying troops with the promise of Kronos' great return yet. He was just a pawn himself, fighting to prove himself to Kronos, and even though he failed, he miraculously found a way to continue to prove his worth. He aided Ares leading up to Percy, Grover and Annabeth embarking on the quest to the underworld, and only solidified his place in Kronos' army after the summer was basically over. As far as Ares, however, we know that he ended up getting off easy, and ultimately switched allegiances back to the side of the Olympians. But again, we've got a whole video covering. I think what's most fascinating about this is just how well Kronos understands human nature, and always knows exactly which strings to pull on to get people to bend to his will. And he could have very well done this to Percy if the circumstances had lined up right. Both Percy and Luke wanted to protect their fellow half-bloods. They were both driven by an unshakable loyalty to the people that they love, and if Percy was more susceptible to the lure of the Titans, then it would have been easy to draw Percy in. The only reason that Percy fights in the Titan War in the first place is not because he loves the gods, but because he understands that the Titans are much worse. He does not praise or respect the gods in any capacity, and he insults and defies them regularly. But if he didn't know up front that Kronos was going to be worse, then he and Luke may have fought alongside each other yet again. But that's a topic for another video. But that's how Luke and Kronos first met, and why Luke was so drawn in by Kronos' power. So let us know what you think. Did we hit everything, or is there something we're missing? We love this series, we love talking about the series, so please join in the conversation below, we'd love to have you. Take care, my friends, don't be tempted by Titans, practice your sword skills, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.